to the FarmBits podcast.
FarmBits is proudly produced by the Nebraska Digital Agriculture team and hosted by students at the University of Nebraska.
The FarmBits podcast comes to you each week to discuss the trends, the realities, and the value of digital agriculture.
Through interviews with experts, producers, and innovators from across the agriculture industry, we hope that you step away from each episode with the new practical knowledge of digital agriculture technology.
Hello, FarmBits followers, and welcome to another episode of FarmBits podcast. I'm Camila Rodrigues.
And I am Ana Clara Gomes, and we are glad to have you with us as a beginning of our discussions on application technology with Debora Latorre.
My name is Debora Latorre. I'm an agronomic engineer. I came from Brazil, so I do have a background. My major is in agronomic engineer. I do have master's and a PhD in wheat science and application technology. I also was a postdoc at the University of Nebraska, working with application technology. Currently, I'm working with TeeJet Technologies as a applicator training lead and industry liaison. That's more related to be working with chemical companies, universities, some OEMs. So it's a really a fun job to do, where I do have the opportunity to be interacting with different divisions on the company.
That is really nice. And what is the pesticide application technology? And why it's so important for agriculture? Can you give us that view?
Yeah, sure. So pesticide application technology, this formal term here, is more related to methods, equipments, and practices that the farmer are going to be using on the daily basis to be spraying effectively a pesticide. If you're gonna be more scientific, I do have a definition that would be the scientific knowledge that provides the correct placement of the biological active product on the intended target in the necessary quantity in an economical manner and the minimal contamination to the target area. So, why is that important? Because I need to have precision and accuracy during my application. So it's not just about, okay, I buy a herbicide here. I need to make this herbicide get on the target precisely and accurately. So on the pesticide label has the dose. So I need to make sure that the minimal dose is gonna get on the weed, for example, so that weed be controlled. Also to have increased efficacy, because if I don't do the proper application, my active ingredient is not going to get on the weeds, or the pest is not going to be controlling that. Also, cost efficiency, if I'm not doing the application technology in a proper way, I'm going to be losing some money because the product is going to be lost, the labor is going to be wasted. And also it's important to consider the reducing environment contamination, because I don't want to be in my product getting in a forest or in a river or the underground water. I want this product getting on the pest to be controlling this pest.
And talking about precision agriculture and pesticide application, could you talk about the difference of those two concepts?
Yeah, so precision agriculture is the approach in agriculture that utilizes technology and data-driven techniques to optimize various aspects. So, for example, I can be using a precision agriculture, if I want to do a precise or site-specific application, or collecting the data I'm using, or doing a variable rate application, or using drones. That's one of the hot topics we have at this moment, or using a target spray application. That's another hot topic at this moment. So all those terms, all these techniques are related to precision agriculture. That's how to use some of the equipment to precisely apply the chemical on the agriculture. Yeah, so I can do the application technology in in a simple way, let's say like that, using just a backpack, or but I can do that like really well. But I can start to like increase the scale and want to be more precise. So I can start to apply some like a precision agriculture to make that like more efficient, like increase the scale. So for example, if I have like a big farm, I know like I don't have the same weed pressure, for example, in all the area. So how I can do like better utilizing, should I be spraying like 10, 15, 20 GPA in my whole area? No, I can do like using some of these new methods that use like a precision agriculture to be like creating a map, identifying where are those weeds, and applying the full dose or only applying the pesticide where those weeds are present.
That's really interesting. So, and talk about TeeJet, how the TeeJet is involved with application technology.
Yeah, so TeeJet, just a little bit, a little background, like to talk about TeeJet. So TeeJet was founded like in 1938, and the first egg products came like when they started to develop or use the 2,4-D after the Second World War for agricultural use. So we started to develop back on that time the first spray tips for spraying 2,4-D. And after that, we start to learn more new chemicals. We start to be developing fungicides, insecticides as well. And we start to learn more like about droplet size, because we start to have more, back on that time, we didn't have like any laser to be understanding what's the importance of having like the accurate droplet size. So all over the years was just like developing new tips. And after, so TeeJet is well known about like as a spray tip manufacturer for herbicides, insecticides, fungicides, and fertilizers. But also we do have an extra, like another line of products for boom components. So like nozzle bodies that you can find in your sprayer, valves, manifolds, guidance assistance, so GPS is like some of matrix, and application control and monitoring like PWM systems, nozzle by nozzle shut off. So TeeJet is involved like all the products we make. We make main for like sprayers, self-propellers, or other kind of sprayers like drones, to be like use it to be spraying chemicals in a manner that's gonna be more efficient.
And can you explain how your positioning TeeJet works?
Yeah, so like my title is really long. So what that means, like application training lead and an industry liaison. So like that was a big title for like international person when I starting to working here. But so my role inside of the company is be connecting different departments. So TeeJet is the egg division of the company. So we do have the industrial side that is called spray systems, and that's like a really huge company. So we have like great resources there. So my role is be finding good like resources like training material or like laser applicability, some different tests to be using our TeeJet side, coming from like an industrial side, but also working with marketing, working with the engineers, working with the tech support to be creating some like technical content, like users guide, catalogs, and also like organizing training material. Like we have some of these training modules we offer for people, farmers, students. So I do work a little bit with everybody side of the company, but basically like working with universities, chemical companies, creating content, and like just sharing like information about our company or about the pesticide application technology.
Interesting. So, and for what it is for you, like the challenges that are in the field that the farm most face related with the technology application?
That's a really interesting question. And like during the trade show seasons, like I think is the time of the year when we have most contact with farmers. because is when like we have direct contact. Most of like our products we sell through like distributors, and like they're gonna be selling direct to the farmers. But what I see like as a challenge, like they have a hard time. Sometimes they buy like a super fancy, the newest machine, and sometimes like they neglect to be selecting the right tip, for example, or replacing that tip every year, for example. So sometimes they are proud to say, I do have a great TeeJet tips, and I bought my machine 5 years ago, and those tips is still working. So and it doesn't matter if like it's here in the US or in Brazil, it's kind of the same challenges, or understanding like it's hard to have one unique tip that's going to be the solution for everything, for every chemical, for every weather condition, for every crop. So different crops, if you take a look like in an apple tree, if you take a look in grapes, if you take a look in soybean, corn, they are different. And so the techniques you need to be using to spray chemicals there should be different too. So that's like, I think that's the hardest part the farmers have, like, to understand about some concepts.
And talking about nozzles, what are the key factors to consider when selecting the right pesticide application nozzle for a specific crop or situation?
That's a really great question. So each nozzle, so back in trying to connect when I was saying like TeeJet started like in the 80 and then early 40s. So back in that time, like basically we are using like a triangle to select like that's the distance from like the crop, and here's going to be my nozzle space, and here's the nozzle angle I would like to be working. But back from there to nowadays, uh, the approach to develop a new spray tip is more related to what I do need for so that spray tip. So each spray tip has a unique design. So like it's gonna, if you take a look like for example like a XR nozzle that was one of our first nozzles, you don't have too much like internal parts on that nozzle. So basically that nozzle is gonna be just carrying the liquid inside, and the X orifice is gonna be like creating the angle, the droplet size, and the pattern. So when you started to create this new nozzle, so if when you go like for example for a TTI, if you take a look like in a cross section of this tip, you're gonna see different chambers inside. And why that? Well, because I need to produce like a certain droplet size. I do need to reduce the driftful fines. I do need to have a specific angle. So I need to have like a attacking angle to better like promote the penetration. So each one of those spray tips, they are designed for like one applicability. So for example, so as I said, like a TTI or a TT, they do have this 15-degree attacking angle. So like a XR or a XR, this like a spray pattern is spraying down, straight down, like in 90 degrees in parallel with like the soil. When I take a look like a TT or TTI, they have like a 15-degree angle for better penetration. So in scenarios where I do have like a more weeds, or those weeds are a little bigger, I would say like using a nozzle with a tacking angle would be better for penetration. When I do have like a dense canopy where I need more coverage, or do have like for example, my corn that's like bigger, my soybeans like already in the reproductive stage, using nozzles with like a twin jet where I do have more droplets being produced, it's important. So regardless, like, okay, I do have like different tips that are gonna have like unique designs, but it's also important to understand like, okay, where is my target? You know, like my target's a weed, it's a bug, it's like it's a disease. Where is that located? Because okay, I do have these different designs to better achieve the target. So it's like it's a soybean rust where I need to get like the product on the bottom of the plant. So I need to use like a twin jet or a TT, as I said, like to better penetrate in the dense canopy. Um, Another thing is important to consider is like the translocation or lack of translocation of a chemical. Because, well, I need to, if you like, is a contact herbicide, for example, I need to have better coverage. So I cannot be using certain nozzles. We're going to be maybe talking more about that in details later. And I think like those are the weather conditions, like what's the weather condition? Like some chemicals or some herbicides, they have on their label some specific weather conditions that application needs to be taking place. So for example, like a certain like a temperature, wind speed. So I do need to be aware of that to be selecting the tip, because certain tips or certain products cannot be taking place on that moment. And also connect all these dots to be selecting the right tip.
Sure. And do you know any tool that it's able for help us to find that specific nozzle for some like a situation or herbicide? Do you have like any tool that you can share with us?
Yeah, so TeeJet has like a app that called Spray Select. It's available for like Androids, for Apple or iPhones, but also we have this platform available in our website in case you don't want to download an extra app, because I know nowadays everything's an app, so you can take a look in our website. So what's are the features of this app? Is just because, okay, I don't know which nozzle should be selected, but I know like what's my GPA, what's my average speed, what's my nozzle spacing. So enter those parameters. Like I know I'm gonna be spraying a herbicide that's gonna be a contact herbicide, and here like is my volume, my speed, and the app is gonna be selecting the proper spray tip, or gonna give you some options of spray tips you should be using, but also the capacity of that spray tip. Because one thing is the model, but it's important to be using like the proper capacity or the proper tip color to be making sure you are applying the right amount of product. So Spray Select is a really nice tool.
And how can nozzle selection and calibration affect pesticide application efficiency and drift control?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, like we have a different nozzles. So like if you take a look, like just on the TeeJet catalog, on the egg side, we do have more than 20 models of nozzles. So it's pretty hard to understand that for the farmer select, okay, which nozzle should be using. So if you don't select the proper nozzle, where it's going to be providing like a specific droplet size, a specific like a spray pattern, a specific like a spray angle, it's going to be hard to be using efficiency or not controlling the drift properly. So like let's bring some practical examples to make it like clear for people understand. So for example, the nozzle EIXR, it's a well-known nozzle. A lot of people use for a lot of things. So what's the great advantage of that nozzle? Like even as an air induction nozzle is gonna have like medium pores, mostly droplet size. So it's a droplet size that's on label for a lot of like insecticides and herbicides. So great, I could be using that nozzle for a lot of those applications. Is a nozzle like used for like a glyphosate, for Liberty, enlist herbicides application, but also for some insecticides as well. Well, okay, but I do have, because of like this medium and porous droplet size, I do have about 10% of driftable fine. So it's a nozzle that I cannot be using, for example, for dicamba application, where I do needed to have like less than 2% of the driftable fines to be like controlling better the drift problem, and then making sure the product's gonna be on containing on that target. So in the case of like, for example, contact herbicides, or like it's a new combination that farmers are using a lot in the field, is a combination of like enlist one, that's a 2,4-D formulation for Corteva, and Liberty, that's ammonium glufosinate. So ammonium glufosinate is a contact herbicide. Well, so I need more coverage. Enlist is a systemic herbicide and super systemic. So I could be using a AIXR, for example, but because of this tank mix, I'm gonna having like a contact herbicide. So I should be using a nozzle that's gonna be providing more droplets to increase the coverage. So that's important, like how selecting the right tap with the like the right percentage of drift fines or drift control. It's important to be selecting and doing like the right selection. But okay, I selected the right model here of tip for my application. It's on label that droplet size. It's according to the recommendation. Now I need to do the proper calibration. So I need to make sure the tip is not like I don't have any wear nozzle in the middle of like my boom. So how I do that? Well, my recommendation is like beginning of each season, do a calibration, making sure your tips are like not having any wear problems and what that means, Deborah. So when I do a test and I can do like a jar test, I can do like using another tool like a spot on and collecting, spraying that nozzle. And like, for example, I set up like a 3-bar and I collect that liquid for like 30 seconds, 60 seconds. The Spray Select app also has a calibration like a tool where you can be using that to check if your nozzle is good or not to be using. And I do a calibration, see if like that nozzle is spraying the proper amount of product or is spraying like 10% more. If it's spraying 10% more, I would recommend it be replacing our whole set of nozzles, because you don't replace one or other because it's gonna have much more work. You're always checking if every nozzle is like it is a wear nozzle or not. So and like using the proper like boom spacing, nozzle spacing, that's like is kind of fix it, so it's hard to you like move that, but also using the proper boom height to be making sure like you're gonna have the right overlap of like the neighbor nozzles and ensure like your CV or the deposition along with the treated area is gonna be good. And in general, for the 110 degrees, that's most of our nozzles we using for egg side we say that this relationship is like 1-to-1. So if the nozzle space is 20 inches, the distance to the target, to the soil, is going to be about 20 inches as well.
Thank you. And for all those aspects, do you can come out like for a number of how much nozzles the farmers needed to have in his toolbox?
Yeah, that's a really hard question to be answering because, well, as I mentioned, it all depends. So I cannot have one only nozzle. That's like a lot of farmers would like to have one nozzle for everything. So to respond to that, I think like first on the planning before they start like the season for planting or for spraying, the farmer needs to understand like what I'm gonna be planting. What are my weeds present here? What are the chemicals I'm gonna be using? What's usually like the weather I do have, because some areas are gonna have like more wind, less wind, the wind coming from one direction. So are any of these products like having any buffer zone requirement, for example? So I do need to have all that planned to know what are my limits up and down, like what I can go like more on the limits for all these products. Oh, all right. Do I do fungicide, insecticide, herbicide, and fertilizer application? So understanding about most of the labels and the requirements, I would say at least 3 nozzles would be the minimum number of nozzles a farmer could have. So like a nozzle for certain herbicide, insecticide, another nozzle there for like fungicide, insecticide, and a nozzle for fertilizer, liquid fertilizer application. Well, now I'm talking about using like more contact or like more like dicamba, for example, where I have more restrictions. So that's when my number of like nozzles starts to increase, and I need to go like to 4 or 5 types of nozzles.
How do weather conditions impact pesticide application and its effectiveness?
Well, I think like the weather conditions like they impact, and they're gonna be impacting mainly like those small droplets. So temperature like above 86 Fahrenheit, or relative humidity lower than 55 percentage, and wind speed above 10 miles per hour are crucial for most of the droplets. So wind speed and direction, they're gonna be like limiting. Like for example, I'm spraying. I do have like a sensitive area by my house, or the farmer, or even like inside of my farm. I do have like different plots, and like I have different varieties of soybean or corn, and maybe they can be sensitive to one active ingredient than other. So wind speed is going to be crucial to be using, to not be spraying on those scenarios where I have like a higher wind direction, or wind speed. Or I can be selecting a spray tip that's going to be more resistant. The droplets are like huge, and you're going to have more resistant to be like dislocated by the wind. The temperature is gonna be a problem in like the droplet size. So like finer, very fine droplets, they can volatilize before they reach the target. So that's is a problem. Like when in the summer days when I do have something like that, okay, I can be adding like an adjuvant oil to be like making that droplet have like a bigger life. Uh, but it's something like I should consider. And the humidity is also another point that's important about like the droplet. So it can be affecting if that droplet's gonna be like disappearing because of the humidity before reaches the target as well.
Okay. And as you mentioned, like TeeJet have a really long history in that position, like provide us the tips and everything. And do you see of this time that it's having like advances in pesticide application technology that have improved the efficacy of of reducing the environment impacting use those tools?
Yes. So like the first herbicide we're applying was like 2,4-D, like or even like something even more toxic than that. So over the years, we do have like observing that the pesticide molecules are less toxic to the environment, to the humans. So we see every day more and more like biological products being approved, developed. Like we see like those big companies buying another small companies just to have more biological products on their portfolio. And we see like those formulations of those products like getting better. In the past we did have like a lot of issues like with clogging because like it was a suspension formula, so it was kind of like a different the formulation was really hard to be using. But now we see like a improved formulation. We see like new equipments every day, like more efficient. So we see like those 120 boom, a feet boom, like sprayer. So just to increase the like why that big? Well, just to increase like the uh, how fast, how much more areas I can be spraying per time. We see like a new uh, nozzles being developed. So in the past, we didn't care too much about what's important for a nozzle. Now we understand like the uh, droplet size is important, like the angle is important. So we see like, those new uh, target spray application, like See and Spray Ultimate coming from John Deere. One Smart Spray coming like this joint venture between Bosch and BASF. So, well, all this concept of like wide angles to have like a better distribution now it start to change a little bit because we are talking about more precise applications. So narrow angle nozzles where all those companies are working on. So every day is changing. Sometimes like it's just like coming something from the past and improving. But what we see like all this improvement on the application technologies, it's getting better because we're understanding more about the target. So we know when like where is the target located more. So we know like how to get better a product there. Uh, the spraying equipments like are getting better every day, more and more. Um, we are understanding what's the right moment to be controlling. So like on the labels of the pesticides, we see like, oh, to control this weed is necessary to control until like this weed is like, I don't know, like 2 inches height. If you pass that moment, you're not gonna be controlling that. And different formulations of products, different type of products. So glufosinate, for example, is like all the products we had, and now we have this new formulation that, like, because of like these new techniques, like yeah, it was like so they had like two isomers, or I don't know how to say that like in an easy way, but like they had like two kind of molecules inside of the herbicide, but they know that just one of that side was active, like acting as a herbicide. So because of like new techniques, new equipments, now I can have the same herbicide but more active, so I can reduce the dose of that herbicide to be controlling. And we are talking now about like nano for fertilizers, nano pesticides. So I don't know. I think that's a lot of things is coming and so fast, and every day is changing. So a lot of advancements in our field.
Yeah. And talking about changes in advance, what do you think about drones in application technology?
Yeah, I think like drones are for sure like a revolution in our area. Now everywhere you go, every like ag news, you're gonna see the topic about drones. So I attended like in last month and like a couple weeks ago a conference or two conferences that were talking about a lot about drones. So it's pretty interesting, like about everything they're talking about drones. So first of all, we did have those drones to do like the mapping, imaging, and now we're talking more about these drones that they actually do the pesticide application. And we do have those drones that have like the multi rotors, like we call like a rotary wing, or we do have those other drones that have like a fixed wing. So I saw this huge drone they call Pika, is a company that's based in California. If you take a look, it looks like a plane, but like doesn't have a pilot. So it's pretty interesting to see like how is everything changing. But there's still like a lot of discussion, like to say, oh, is that good? Is that good? Like it's still a new technology. Even like they were talking about, we are like a decade already, like doing some research with drones, but still having more questions than like actually answers. Because well, we have different models. Those nozzles are positioned in different parts of the drone. So should I be using like a hydraulic nozzle? Should I be using like some of these new drones coming from China are coming with those like rotary nozzles, and they promise like, okay, you change the rotation of that disc and are gonna have a different droplet size. Well, we start to see like some inconsistencies on that. So it's pretty interesting like the way we're going. But the thing I know like like we have the regulation to be like having a license to spray with a drone is getting much faster to get that license. We know like more professors are doing more research to understand about what's the effective swath, like what's the ideal like boom height, what's the ideal droplet size I should be using for the to make sure like the drop is gonna get to the target and minimize drift problems. And like those chemical companies now, they need to put all this information on the label. So they came together and they have like a task force for mitigating drift with drones. So like Syngenta, FMC, New Farm, from all over the world, they do have like this team that they work with testing, creating some models to be applying on drones and see like what's the optimal recommendation regarding nozzles, like for mitigating drift. So it's pretty interesting, and like when you go to those meetings and you see that it comes with more questions than answers, but you see like because it's still a lot of to come.
There is really like a new topic. It's like when you saw like the revolution technologies happen. But
Yeah,
like
the revolution is right now, so it's gonna be great for us. Like now, because like we are gonna be learning a lot. So for example, remember some years ago, I saw some people talk about like using very fine droplets to be using with drones because of the downwash effect. Well, some research is showing that's not like that. Maybe if the drone is not moving too fast, you can see the downwash effect, but when it's moving a little faster, that's mostly like the usual speed that's moving, you're going to start to lose that downwash effect, and maybe you're losing the product. So they're talking more going to medium coarse droplet size, not just too much like if fine and very fine droplet size. So it's really interesting to see where is that going.
There is different aspect that you can always see, and jumping for other aspect like the eco-friendly one, like there is any alternative that you can also do a technology application related with eco-friendly production.
So yes, now as I mentioned, like we are having every day more and more of these like biological products. And what's a biological product? So like maybe a bacteria that controls another insect, or maybe like is insect that controls another insect. So we see like those BTs or different types of BTs being launched every day more and more. So those are eco-friendly because you don't see like having, at least at this moment, we don't see like any side effect for humans. So another alternative is like we see like we do have a lot of options, but sometimes depending like how big is your farm, it start to get like harder to adopt or not, because it can be like really costly. So we see like some of those uh, machines that is like, instead of like spraying a product, they are like burning a weed. Well, what's like the efficiency like of that machine? How much cost, and like how many acres I can do by hour? So that's when it's still like a lot of like discussions about this topic. Um, I think like biological products is the way that the market is seeing, and like the way they're gonna go. We are talking about applying or developing new crops with like they call RNA. So it's like kind of like you're gonna be changing, you're gonna be spraying maybe, or modifying a RNA on the plant. Like instead of a DNA, you're gonna be changing like the RNA. You're gonna be making that plant more susceptible, or spraying a RNA that you're gonna be controlling some weeds. So it's a different world we are going, and I think like the direction we are going, it's like more having this eco-friendly solution. So for example, to who is not familiar like what's going on in Europe, so Europe is like they are super restrictive for pesticide application. So right now, for example, as we have some nozzles that we sell in different countries, we need to have a certification of those nozzles. So for example, in Germany, you have the certification with JKI. Like in France, we have the certification with the INRAE. We do have like a CILSO is a lab that does all the certification for UK. So we need to certify those nozzles, and they use different parameters to say this nozzle reduces drift by 90%, by 75%. Okay, so is something that's happening in Europe in a lot of countries. Well, but they have now, they call Green Deal. That's by 2030. So in 7 years, they need to cut in 50% the use of like pesticides. They need to reduce in 25% the farm areas. They need to reduce the fertilizer application. So I don't know which direction they are going, but like I don't know if they're going to the right direction or no. Like I'm not living in Europe to say, but what's the key message why I'm sharing that? Just to say like that's gonna affect in different countries as well, like US or Brazil or other countries that the agriculture is a big thing, because well, you're gonna start to see now more like a requirement for less pesticides, or less like toxic pesticides during those during all the growth development of those crops. So yes.
Yeah.
It's complicated, and like we are involved in the food production channel. It's pretty hard. It's getting hard for us.
And do you think that this way that Europe are going, it's a good thing for like technology application, like limited that much for the farmer? Do you think it's a good idea? How you have
Well, like I did have a discussion. So has this professor. His name is Emilio Gil. He's a professor at the University of Catalonia in Spain, and he does a lot of research for like orchards and vineyards application. Well, we know that the volume they use to spray pesticides is much higher, and he's doing a lot of tests to see like how we can cut in 50% the pesticides to control like efficiently like the diseases or the pests like in vineyards. And he was telling like that's really hard that happens because well, for sure who creates those regulations they don't have any knowledge about like how to produce food. Okay, I'm not saying I'm against organics, but like to feed the population that we're talking about by like 2050, we are gonna be like increasing I don't even know how many percent we're gonna have about like 10 billion of people in the world. So how we are gonna be feeding all those people, just cutting a lot of like the fertilizers or the chemicals, is when we start to see like I don't know, 20 years ago we didn't have like a great yield. And so I think they're for sure uh the ideal world where okay, let's have more organic, let's have like just better food, no chemicals. That's kind of their mentality, but like they don't understand like how hard it's gonna be to increasing yield and producing food is gonna be if they keep going on that direction.
Yeah, we can see many changes, and you need to be fast to be part of all those changes, and always go after knowledge to understand what is happening. Yeah, and have this conversation that we are having now. Yeah, that is really fascinating. And how can growers minimize pesticide resistance through effective application technology?
Yeah, so we see that's a problem, like in weeds or like in diseases, not too much, but insects and pests, we also see that. So how you do that? Well, if you will like attend a conference, if you attend like some trade shows where the chemical companies are there, they are gonna be saying rotate the pesticide. Never use the same active ingredients. If you take a look like all chemical company, how they position, they are gonna be always rotating the active ingredient. And I'm not saying just changing the brand, but no active ingredient because well, Roundup, it's from Bayer, but I cannot go to like Syngenta be using their glyphosate because it's gonna be the same thing. So I need to be rotating the active ingredient to postpone or make it longer that active ingredient more active. Also like follow the pesticide label requirements. So like okay, so that's the problem. We were talking about the drone, so we were talking about well 10 20 GPA is like the rate of application. When I'm gonna go to the drone, I cannot make it like that huge volume of application, so it's at our target label. So that's why they are doing a lot of research to understand it. But using the proper dose is going to be making sure that the target is getting the right amount of active ingredient to be controlled. Also like maintaining the equipment, so making sure you don't have any like clogging, making sure your equipment's like applying every nozzle the same amount of products. I don't have like any like I know a lot of people don't clean very much like the strainer, the main strainer that's going to be like by the pump, or the line strainer that is going to be along the boom, or the tip strainer. So it's important to do that to make sure your active ingredient is not being retained there. You're actually spraying the active ingredient. It's not just getting stuck inside of all the dirty is on these strainers. And also make it like the proper calibration, as I said, like making sure your boom is going to be stable, is not like lacking stable, to make sure like you're gonna having the proper overlap of all neighbor nozzles and getting the same amount of products all over the area, making sure you are using also the same model of nozzle. So like, as I mentioned one point here about the color, okay, do have the color, and some people go like, I want the blue nozzle, blue TeeJet nozzle. Well, that just means that the nozzle sprays 0.3 gallons per minute, but doesn't show the model. So different nozzles are gonna have different spray angles, different droplet size. So if I mix up the models of nozzles I do have along of my bowl, I'm gonna have different CVs, different like products are gonna be depositing different volumes along of the treated area. So it's important to be using also the same nozzle model. Monitor for resistance, and like I spray, I see like when we escape there. Well, if possible, go there and remove. I remember one of the trade shows, a guy was saying, I don't have any problem with water hemp or any pigweed in my area, because when I was spraying, when I see a pigweed, I was going out of my spray or my combine when I was harvesting, I was pulling that. So my neighbors all are having problems with resistance. No, but I remove like manually that. But that was years ago when like they didn't have he didn't have too many weeds on his area. So monitor, like if you can do that, like it's great, because nothing is better like than just using one way to control that weed, like using mechanical way, like pulling that weed if it's possible, but using a pesticide. And if you see like, okay, I'm applying, that's not controlling, it's probably something you need to be like aware of, and using another method to control that weed to avoid that they spread of that resistant population you potentially have in your area. And if it's nothing working, or if I have some questions, seek for some professional advice. So the University of Nebraska, they have like a great extension program, but every state has like someone that you can be looking for, your cooperative, like your where you go and buy your chemical company, someone's gonna be able to be giving you a good advice.
Thank you for that. And thinking in what areas do you believe that is still further attention and technology application? And do you think that the EIs that is helping us like most all, or they can also help us doing that?
Yeah, I think like we are seeing every day more and more AIs in everything. So we have like Chat GPT, we do have like AI, all the softwares, even your Word or your Office package now comes with AI. Photoshop comes with AI. So I guess it's like the way it's gonna go. AI is gonna be incorporated almost in everything. And I do see a value like how that can be helping the pesticide application technology, like on the precision application. So for example, we see some of those like a target spray applications. So they use AI to be learning every day more and more about like detecting the weed species to be more efficient, like which herbicide they're going to be spraying. And those companies, they're talking about the feature having like maybe three herbicides applying at the same time. So based like on the weed detection, you're going to be spraying herbicide A, B, or C, or a combination of it. So that's going to be an important role, like how we can be using that to be like that efficient during application. Also like detecting and monitoring for like weeds, for like some diseases, for nutritional problems. So we do have like some platforms already available today, like Zarvi Scouting or other platforms that are not so familiar, but like they offer like a drones, for example, go there flying, and kind of according to like the color intensity, you can identify if it's like a weed problems, or if it's like you need to have like a, you don't have too much in like a nitrogen there. So it's really interesting. Like creates this map, and that map connects with your sprayer, and you can do spraying like just like on that areas, or connect to your drone, and your drone is gonna go there and just spray on that area where we have a problem. So we see every day more and more like that's AI being incorporated on those equipments. predicting modeling for like problems like with resistance or problem with the drift, and doing this like integrated data between all those equipments to make it more efficient, the application technology of those pesticides.
And if our listeners wants to learn more about TeeJet, where can they find more information?
So TeeJet, we do have like in our website, you can find a lot of information. So to who is not aware, we do have a new catalog. That's the catalog like 52. So you can go to our website and download the PDF, for example, of our catalog. We do have a lot of bulletins there. We do have a new updated user guide. So a lot of those discussions we had here today, we create a new user guide that talks about the main topics about application technology. So it's really great. And also you can follow us in our social media channels, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, TeeJet.com, or sorry, TeeJet Technologies. And you can find like we are always promoting content that's going to be easier to the farmer select what's the right spray tip according to those chemicals they are using in the field.
That is really nice. And there is anything that we didn't talk today that you might want to add, that feel free, please, to talk.
Yeah, well, I think like we covered, well, always gonna have something. We kind of like cover a little bit of everything, right? So I guess like in my advice to everybody is just like to keep it more updated on the news as you can, like you're watching YouTube channels, like you guys are saying this podcast is gonna be available on the YouTube. It has some families, farmers that they have like those channels or keep updated on those news, or like using social media to know more about it, attending like those extension like meetings, field days, like a conference or trade shows to be more update about like what's new, how I can be more efficient, like using my chemicals, how I can be like saving some of the chemicals. That's what's important too. But in the way that I can be still like controlling my pest and not causing any damage to the environment.
And a tradition on the FarmBits podcast is to ask for a piece of advice.
Well,
What advice do you have for anyone interested in working with pesticide application technology?
keep doing like kind of like the same topic I was talking before, like I think educating yourself, like even though like okay, I'm a third generation farmer here, I know everything. No, we don't know, because well, in three generations we have so much technology. So since like we started, like I start my college in 2006. If I compare when I start college with now, it's just so many changes happen. So training, GAGA training, GAGA certification. So for some chemicals, you need to be certified. You have a license to be spraying. You need to be certified. But like, try to be training for something like for like with this extension is, or with other people that can be offering you some training, because it's probably always something new you can be learning with that. Understanding about pesticides, like okay, well, we're talking about translocation, contacts. Is that clear to you? So understand more about what you're using your daily basis to be optimizing the way you spray and make your decisions. Safety first. So like use the proper PPEs and like make sure you are cleaning, just so you like don't have any issues in the future. Like making sure like you are using the integrated pest management. Well, I do have one like weed here. Do I need to be spraying like 15 herbicide to be controlling that? No. So use like consciously like these chemicals, because if you don't use those chemicals, insecticide, fungicide, herbicide incorrectly, you're gonna just be promoting like the resistance of those pests to be controlled. And like in the future, we are gonna be lacking having more options of those products to be controlling your target. Try to implement like and be aware of like a precision technology, what's new, how you can be using, and always be trained to be learning how to be using that, because it doesn't matter if you like I have like an old machine or I have a new one. If I don't know how to use everything, it kind of like it is not gonna matter too much because I don't know how to use everything. So I can be doing something wrong. Be responsible with the environment. So it's easy to see an issue with application with when you're spraying a herbicide because, well, like your other like plot or your neighbor can see the damage if something is susceptible to that herbicide. Well, but it's understanding like if you can have a problem with the drift, that also happens with a fungicide application, with insecticide application. So be conscious with that, like avoid to be spraying to some directions that you should not be spraying or following the weather conditions that are proper to you avoid some environment contamination. Like it's important to be recording everything you have in case like I did something wrong, what I did wrong. I can go to my notes and see what I did wrong and or I did right and just repeat in the next season. Follow the weather recommendations. That's like you can find like in the, for example, the University of Nebraska guide for weed and disease and pest control. Always stay informed, adapt to local conditions. So, for example, maybe what works on my farm here in another SIG is not going to be working because some of the wind direction is different or the soil is a little bit different. So understand the concept, but try to adapt to your local conditions. And always complying and with the regulations. So follow the label, follow any other restriction that's going to be having your area, just to make sure you are not doing anything wrong and you can have any issues in the future from your neighbor or from someone else.
Well, those were great advices. Thank you. Thank you very much to Debora Latorre for taking the time to join this episode of the FarmBits podcast. It's really exciting how farmers are having high technology options for an efficient application technology. One of my favorite parts of this episode and what the TeeJet company has available is the app called Spray Select to support farmers' decision when choosing the right nozzle.
I also think the mention of the European herbicide legislation is a faced challenge that will be exciting to see how will be conducted. I hope you enjoy that episode and we look forward to sharing another digital ag history with you in the next week on FarmBits.
Thank you for taking the time to join us today on the FarmBits podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcast, YouTube, or wherever you listen to podcasts to be informed about the latest content each week.
We will welcome your feedback. So if you have comments or questions for us, please reach out us over email or Twitter in the review sections of your favorite podcast platform. Your contact information can be found in the show notes.
We would like to thank Nebraska Extension for this support of this podcast and their commitment to providing high-quality informational material to members of the agriculture community in Nebraska and beyond.
The opinion expressed by the host and guests on this podcast are solely their own and do not reflect the views of Nebraska Extension or the University of Nebraska.